Have you ever heard of the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans made their last stand? Japan has its own version of this epic story, a tale of loyalty, honor, and the tragic end of an era. This is the story of the Battle of Shirayama, the last stand of the samurai. Our story begins in the late 19th century. Japan was undergoing a massive transformation. The Meiji Restoration had just swept through the country, ending centuries of feudal rule under the shoguns and restoring power to the emperor. The new government was determined to modernize Japan at lightning speed, adopting Western technology, politics, and military tactics. Think of it as a nationwide upgrade. Moving from flip phones straight to the latest smartphones in just a few years, this rapid change wasn't welcomed by everyone. The samurai, once the elite warrior class and the backbone of Japanese society, suddenly found themselves obsolete. Their privileges were stripped away, their traditional top-knot hairstyle was discouraged, and they were even forbidden from carrying their iconic katana swords in public. Imagine being a celebrated hero one day and a relic the next. It was a massive blow to their identity and their honor. Among those who resisted this change was a man who has become a legend, Sage Takamori. Sage wasn't just any samurai. He was a national hero, one of the key figures who helped bring about the Meiji Restoration in the first place. He was a giant of a man, both in physical stature and in reputation, deeply respected for his integrity and his unwavering commitment to the samurai code of Bushido. He was often called the last true samurai. Initially, Sage supported the new government, but he grew increasingly disillusioned. He saw the new policies as a betrayal of Japanese tradition and a dishonor to the samurai class he held so dear. He believed that while modernization was necessary, it shouldn't come at the cost of Japan's soul. So, he resigned from his government post and returned to his home province of Satsuma, in the south of Japan. In Satsuma, Sage became a rallying point for discontented samurai. He founded private schools that taught not just academics, but the traditional martial arts and the principles of Bushido. Thousands of former samurai, young and old, flocked to join him. They saw him as their last hope to preserve their way of life. The government in Tokyo grew nervous. They saw Sage's growing influence as a direct threat to their authority. It was a classic powder keg situation, and it was only a matter of time before a spark would ignite it. That spark came in 1877. Tensions boiled over, and the Satsuma Rebellion began. Sage, feeling bound by duty to his followers, reluctantly led an army of around 15,000 samurai against the new Imperial Japanese army. At first, the samurai, with their superior swordsmanship and fierce fighting spirit, had some success. But they were facing a force unlike any they had ever encountered. The Imperial Army was a modern, conscripted force. They were armed with the latest Western firearms, including breech-loading rifles and powerful artillery cannons. They were trained in modern tactics and had a massive numerical advantage. For the samurai, it was like bringing a sword to a gunfight, literally. Their skill and courage were undeniable, but they were no match for overwhelming firepower. Over several months, the Imperial Army systematically pushed the rebels back. The samurai forces were whittled down in a series of brutal battles. Many were killed, and others deserted as the situation grew more hopeless. Sage and his most loyal followers were forced into a retreat, fighting a desperate running battle across the island of Kyushu. Finally, in September 1877, the rebellion reached its final, tragic chapter. Sage and his last remaining followers, a band of roughly 400 samurai, were cornered on a small hill in the city of Kagoshima. The hill was called Shirayama, which means Castle Mountain. It was here that they would make their final stand. Surrounding them were 30,000 soldiers of the Imperial Army, backed by naval warships in the bay. The odds were impossible, 75-1. The Imperial forces spent days building elaborate earthworks and trenches, completely encircling the hill to ensure no one could escape. They bombarded the samurai position relentlessly with artillery, day and night. Inside the dwindling samurai camp, the mood was somber but resolute. They knew there was no escape. There would be no surrender. For a samurai, surrender was the ultimate dishonor. The only path left was a glorious death in battle, upholding the principles of Bushido to the very end. Sage and his men spent their final night drinking sake, singing songs, and preparing for their destiny. On the morning of September 24, 1877, the final assault began. At dawn, the Imperial cannons opened fire one last time. Then, the infantry charged up the hill from all sides. What followed was not a battle in the modern sense, but a massacre. The samurai, many of them already wounded, drew their katanas and charged downhill into the storm of bullets. It was a clash of two worlds. The age of the sword against the age of the gun. The samurai fought with incredible bravery, their swords flashing as they cut down enemy soldiers in close quarters combat. But for every soldier they struck down, 10 more took his place, firing rifles from a safe distance. In the midst of the chaos, Sage Takamori was struck by a bullet in his hip or thigh. Unable to fight on, he knew his time had come. According to the code of Bushido, a samurai leader must not be captured. One of his closest followers, Beppu Shinsuke, carried him to a quieter spot. There, Sage committed seppuku, the ritual suicide of a samurai, while Beppu acted as his second, ending his master's life with a swift cut to prevent a prolonged, agonizing death. It was the ultimate act of honor. With their leader gone, the remaining samurai fought on until every last one of them was killed. By 7 a.m., the battle was over. The silence that fell over Shirayama marked the end of the samurai as a military force in Japan. The rebellion was crushed, and the new era had decisively won. But the story doesn't end there. In a strange twist of fate, the Meiji government, the very same government that had crushed him, recognized the power of Sage's story. They needed heroes for their new Japan, and Sage, despite being a rebel, embodied the traditional virtues of loyalty and self-sacrifice that they wanted to instill in the nation. Within a few years, Sage Takamori was posthumously pardoned and hailed as a tragic hero. Statues were erected in his honor, most famously the one in Ueno Park in Tokyo. He became a symbol of the noble failure, a man who fought for his beliefs against impossible odds. The Battle of Shirayama was more than just the last stand of the samurai. It was a defining moment in Japanese history. It represented the painful but necessary transition from a feudal, warrior-led society to a modern, industrialized nation. While the samurai way of life vanished from the battlefield, its spirit, the code of Bushido with its emphasis on honor, discipline, and loyalty didn't disappear. It was absorbed into the fabric of modern Japanese culture, influencing everything from business practices to martial arts. So, the next time you think of a last stand, remember the 400 samurai on Shirayama. Their story is a powerful reminder that even in defeat, there can be honor, and that the end of one era is often the violent, tragic, but necessary birth of another. Thanks for watching. If you found this piece of history as fascinating as I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the past. See you next time.